For the first time in Asia, connect your landphone and smartphone through SLT Wi-Fi with the SLT Voice app.
Tonight, keep away. 2 Buddhist chapters and the Cardinal herald a vehement no to US military in Sri Lanka. What's the point? The Financial Intelligence Unit was not a part of the Security Council.
Now, yes. Not. In the past, we have been, but in the recent past, we have not.
People expect the central bank to do everything. I mean, we're a central bank, not a law enforcement agency. The central bank's role is receiving these reports, analyzing them, and then passing it over to the law enforcement.
Last resort. Venerable Atureye Terah launches hunger strike calling for the removal of alleged extremist trio. How China relaxed the travel ban. It took more than the minister's word.
When we visited the Chinese ambassador, we took along with us one of those chief intelligence officers in the army who told the ambassador categorically that Sri Lanka is now a safe place.
All this and much more coming up on First at 9 this Friday, the 31st of May 2019.
AdaDerana ඇතුළත ඉදිමීම සමනය කරන අතර විනාඩි 5කින් ක්‍රියා කිරීම ආරම්භයි. AdaDerana දිවියට නව දිරයක්. AdaDerana වෙතින් එසේ කැක්කමට විශේෂඥයා AdaDerana Headfast ඉක්මනට සහනය අදම අත්විඳින්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to First at 9. We have a host of stories to report to you from local, international and sports developments from across the world and in Sri Lanka. We start off with the agreement made by heads of religious leaders in opposing agreements allowing foreign forces to have their bases in Sri Lanka. Well, chief prelates of the Asgiriya chapter along with 2 deputy chief prelates of the Malvatta chapter held a discussion with the Archbishop of Colombo today in Kandy. The talk centered on agreements which are malignant to Sri Lanka, enabling US military bases to be set up on Sri Lankan soil.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit called on the chief prelate of the Asgiri chapter, Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Jnanaratana Terah in Kandy today. Deputy Chief Prelates of the Malvatta chapter, Most Venerable Niyangoda Vijitasiri Terah and Most Venerable Dimul Kumbure Sri Vimala Dhamma Terah also joined the occasion and a discussion ensued.
We object any agreement that allows foreign troops to enter Sri Lanka, establish camps or use our land according to their will. It is the duty of the government to establish a common law by proscribing religious extremist organisations.
Police recovered a laptop computer in the Palmone Lagoon in Akkarepattu today, which is suspected to have been used by Zaharan Hashim, the ringleader of the Easter Sunday attacks and the leader of the National Tawhid Jamaat. The residence of Zaharan's coordinators in Kalmone was subject to search.
The house of suspected terrorist ringleader Zaharan Hashim's coordinator's wife was the focus of a search operation today by the security forces. Shahul Hamid Hamiz Mohammed alias Kalmune Siam was Zaharan's coordinator for Kalmune. The search operation led to the discovery of cash amounting to 3.5 million rupees along with jewellery. In the meantime, upon a tip-off received by officials of the State Intelligence Services, police recovered a laptop computer suspected to have been used by the alleged mastermind behind the Easter Sunday bombings, Zaharan Hashim. The laptop computer was found in the Palamune Lagoon in Akkarepattu.
And in the meantime, the Attorney General's Department has requested the Supreme Court for a fuller bench to consider the fundamental rights petition against the Inspector General of Police and the former Defence Secretary. The FR petition was filed against former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando and IGP Pujit Jayasundara for allegedly failing to act on prior information pertaining to the Easter Sunday terror attacks. The petition was taken up before a three-judge bench this morning. The Attorney General's Department informed court that the AG has requested from the Chief Justice through a motion to consider the petition before a fuller bench as the case is of national importance. The attorney, appearing on behalf of the plaintiffs, said in turn that he had no objection to the AG's request for a fuller bench. The judge bench ordered to submit the petitions to the Chief Justice to decide on further steps while deciding to take the case up again on the 6th of June. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa calls for an end to narrow political aspirations when national security is in jeopardy. Addressing members of the public at his Carlton residence, the opposition leader said that the government must be more responsible when conducting investigations, especially when it concerns secret service.
During the Millennium City issue, Udugampola outed the names. After this happened, the LTTs started assassinating those who were mentioned. They managed to kill almost everyone who were active members of the military, except for one person who managed to escape the country. If you need to obtain secret information, you will have to send in a spy. Every government organisation and the police do this. You will have to pay the spy, since they're not going to give information for free. From the inception of this organisation, we managed to send in spies from the intelligence service. Now they want to fulfil their own narrow political agendas to sling mud by asking for the list of names and presenting various allegations against them. They're currently being questioned. I believe this is wrong. When it comes to the secret service or confidential information of the country, this should not be made public. Investigations must be conducted responsibly. They say 99% of the situation is under control, but the problem we have is with the remaining 1%. The Defence Council had not convened for 2 months. Do you see how negligent they are? There is another committee underneath the Defence Council which met on the 12th, but the topic had not been taken up for discussion on that day either. This shows that the government does not pay enough attention to the country's security.
Parliamentarian Venerable Athurali Ratana Terah launched a hunger strike today, demanding the removal of Minister Rishad Badiuddin as well as Governors MLAM Hizbullah and Asad Salih from their respective portfolios. He also demanded the appointment of an independent body to probe allegations of performing illegal sterilisation procedures on mothers levelled against a certain doctor. The Terah is adamant that he will not let up until the President pays heed to his demands.
Member of Parliament Venerable Athurali Ratana Terah visited the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy this morning and engaged in religious observances. The Terah then launched a hunger strike near the temple, demanding the removal of Minister Rishad Badiuddin, Governors MLAM Hizbullah and Asad Salih from their respective positions. The Terah also demanded the establishment of an independent body to investigate allegations against Dr. Mohammed Shafi. The doctor is accused of performing illegal sterilisation procedures on mothers. The Terah has also informed the President, the Prime Minister as well as ministers about his demands and the hunger strike.
Madrasa schools in the country have prepared the ideology for such brutal violence. The executive powers vested with the President is being used by Governor of the Eastern Province, Hizbullah, who was also appointed by the President himself. He has been able to use his powers over the education and health sector of the province due to the failure to hold democratic provincial council elections. Asad Salih, meanwhile, is using the President's executive power for his extremist acts in the Western Province. Minister Rishad Badiuddin is given power over 40 institutions in the country, only to use his powers for racism and corruption. In consideration of these things, we request the President to remove this trio from their positions. Meanwhile, several extremist doctors in various hospitals, including Kurunegala and Peradeniya, have engaged in an organised plan to sterilise the entire Sinhala race. Over 300 people have lodged complaints in this regard. Therefore, I will not sit up until these people are removed from their positions by the President.
Minister of Tourism Development John Amarathunga reveals that it took the presence of an intelligence officer to convince China to relax the travel ban placed on Sri Lanka by the superpower owing to Easter Sunday. Speaking to First at 9 yesterday, the minister expressed optimism that the likes of India would follow suit when China lifts their travel ban on the island nation.
Last year, the Chinese people who came to Sri Lanka was about 270,000. This year, up to April, the arrival was about 98,767 for the 3.5 months. So calculating on that, by the end of the year, we may have had a close upon 350,000 to 400 Chinese who would have been visiting. As soon as the incident took place, China issued a travel advisory asking Chinese people not to travel to Sri Lanka. However, when we visited the Chinese ambassador, we took along with us one of those chief intelligence officers in the army who was responsible for conducting investigations, came out and told the ambassador very categorically that Sri Lanka is now a safe place. In the course of the day, China lifted the ban or softened the ban. It was the first country that came out boldly to say Sri Lanka is safe enough to travel. Once China has lifted the ban, I am quite certain India will follow in the next couple of days, and so on with the European countries. Ultimately, there will be no travel ban. We visited the High Commission of India, we met the German ambassador, we have met the French ambassador and many others, and made a personal request to them to say that the situation is well under control and that most of those terrorists who were involved directly and indirectly have been apprehended and they are in custody.
Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, H.A. Karunaratne, revealed today that the Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank was let out of National Security Council meetings in the lead-up to the Easter Sunday bombings. Karunaratne went on to say that although the Financial Intelligence Unit did sit through these meetings in the past, the unit's participation in the recent times have been non-existent. The Financial Intelligence Unit is tasked with investigating terrorism, financing and money laundering. Meanwhile, speaking to journalists at the Monetary Policy Review meeting today, Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy said that the Central Bank is working towards establishing strong cooperation between the Attorney General's Department, the CID and the Financial Intelligence Unit in order to promote better sharing of information.
අප්‍රේල් 21 ප්‍රහාරයට සම්බන්ධ වෙච්ච සැකකරුවන්ගේ ගිණුම් වලට විශාල වශයෙන් මුදල් ආපු බවක් වාර්තා වුණා. ඒ වගේම බිට්කොයින් හරහා ගනුදෙනු සිද්ධ වෙච්ච බවකුත් ෆොරින් මීඩියා වාර්තා කරලා තිබ්බා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මූල්‍ය බුද්ධි ඒකකයේ යම්කිසි පරීක්ෂණයක් කරලා තියෙනවද මොන හරි තොරතුරු තියෙනවද ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන්?
The Financial Intelligence Unit has conducted investigations into this, but because of the confidentiality of the information, we are unable to tell you any further details. But we are looking into the matter. We cannot clearly identify if transactions were made via Bitcoin, even though there was a large number of deposits in certain accounts. But we cannot pinpoint one certain individual.
Your detection as far as these so-called Islamist radicals accounts are concerned, why wasn't it possible for you to take a proactive steps to sort of mitigate any impact like what happened on 21st April?
There is a reporting system under the FTRA, Financial Transaction Reporting Act. All transactions above ₹1 million have to be reported to the Financial Intelligence Unit. And then that is another category is suspicious transactions, an STR. So again, banks, if they have any suspicion, they report. But clearly, money comes in and probably particularly within this community, money has been coming in for a long time because there is money that comes for social work in that community, which is perfectly legitimate money which has been coming in.
The government has said that it was aware of these individuals, their foreign travel and their links to IS even before the attack. So hadn't they shared such intelligence with you for you to monitor their accounts.
The Financial Intelligence Unit is administratively linked to the central bank, but its operations are entirely independent. Even I have no idea.
සාමාන්‍ය මහජනතාවට ඇති වෙන හැඟීම තමයි මේ සල්ලි ත්‍රස්තවාදී කටයුතුට ඇවිල්ලා ත්‍රස්තවාදී කටයුතු සිදු වුණා. එතකොට මේක වැළක්වන්න මොකක්වත් උනාද කියන එක.
Clearly we have to tighten things up. I mean, now I think it is a fact that there was 10 years of peace and none of us had any suspicion that this type of thing will happen. So we have to learn lessons like everybody else. So all that, I'm sure the FIU in collaboration with the law enforcement people, we are setting up much stronger coordination between the AG's department, the CID, and their Financial Intelligence Unit, so that we can move these cases on much faster, to have better sharing of information.
Is the FIU also part of the National Security Council? Do you all also take part in
Now, yes.
Not post-2012?
In the past, we have been, but in the recent past, we have not.
I think one general point to make, not just in relation to the FIU, often I sense there isn't a good understanding of the limits of the role of the central bank. People expect the central bank to do everything. I mean, we're a central bank, not a law enforcement agency. And the FIU, as I said, is not part of the central bank as such. It is only administratively linked to the central bank. Why it kind of works is because there is a very close relationship between the FIU and the CID. You've got to see what the central bank's role is, which is receiving these reports, analyzing them, and then passing it over to the law enforcement. So you have to understand where the central bank operates.
The joint opposition charges that there are 42 institutions falling under Minister Asad Badruddin and that all persons heading these entities are the minister's henchmen. Addressing a media briefing in Colombo today, they also cautioned of an alleged plan in motion to shift money received by terrorists linked to the Easter attacks out of the country.
We hear that Rashad Badruddin's money is in accounts belonging to his acquaintances, while some other assets and money are registered under the names of his relatives. We hear that there are attempts to withdraw these billions of rupees which came into the country through this terrorist movement to be sent out of the country. We call on the governor of the central bank and other responsible officials to suspend all accounts with inordinate sums of money. We also question as to from where did money come into Mohammed Shafi's account? What are the assets and liabilities of Alauddin, who is an uncle of Badruddin and is involved in the Easter attacks? The chairman of the Election Commission should also have the assets and liability declaration of Mohammed Ibrahim, who was on the JVP's national list. These investigations should be hurried with the involvement of the CID, the police or the Terrorist Investigation Division. We request the central bank governor and others responsible to not allow this terrorists' money to be shifted whilst hiding behind the drama, which is the Parliamentary Select Committee.
Still in local news, President Maithripala Sirisena and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was sworn in for a second term after a recent landslide victory, held bilateral discussions at Hyderabad House in India today. The Indian Premier expressed his fullest support to Sri Lanka in all spheres during the meeting.
Newly elected Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi took oaths as the Prime Minister of India for a second consecutive term today. President Maithripala Sirisena was among those invited for the swearing-in ceremony last evening. In the first of a series of bilateral meetings with foreign leaders lined up today, the Indian Prime Minister held a meeting with President Maithripala Sirisena at Hyderabad House this morning. The President was extended a warm welcome by the newly elected Prime Minister, which was followed by cordial discussions. During the meeting, Modi expressed his condolences for those who lost their lives in the Easter Sunday attacks and extended his assistance in strengthening cooperation towards promoting peace and development. According to the President's media division, the President congratulated the Indian Prime Minister on his appointment. Taking to Twitter, the President noted that the bilateral meeting was very successful and covered many areas, including making South Asia stronger and more secure, whilst looking forward to Prime Minister Modi's visit to the island very soon.
Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, insists that the presidential election cannot be postponed under any circumstances and that nominations will be called in October. Speaking to AdaDerana, Deshapriya went on to say that the country's security situation is not in any way a hindrance to holding elections.
Even if the president or the parliament has called for the presidential election or the parliamentary elections, the security situation of the country is no problem for us. 1988 and 1989, the security situation was worse than this. We have conducted that election. So, in this situation, it is very easy to us to conduct an election. So, security situation is not a problem.
The chairman of the Election Commission further highlighted that the presidential election will be held between the 9th of November and the 10th of December this year, and it cannot be postponed under any circumstances.
The Election Commission thinks that the first election must be the Provincial Council election. But without the delimitation report or the preview committee report, we can't have the election now. But anytime president or the parliament can call their elections. If the president wants to get the mandate from the people to elect another time, he can call any time the election. Parliament can dissolve the parliament with the 2/3 votes to dissolve the parliament and have the election. Without that, the scheduled election is president's election in between 9th of November and 9th of December in 2019. No one can postpone that election. So for that, the latest date for the call for the nomination around 20th of October. So we election commission definitely we call the nomination for the election, president election, if president has not get the call for the early election. We will call the nomination.
U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs R. Clark Cooper is set to travel to Singapore, India and also Sri Lanka from the 29th of May to the 7th of June. The U.S. Embassy in Sri Lanka said in a statement that whilst in Sri Lanka, the Assistant Secretary Cooper will meet with government officials and think tank experts to discuss security, peacekeeping, clearance of landmines and unexploded ordnance, counter-terrorism and other areas of mutual interest. Meanwhile, Cooper is to discuss defence cooperation and peacekeeping during his visit to India. And we have more news coming up after this short break. Do stay with us on First at 9. Welcome back. The central bank today cut its key interest rates to support an uncertain economy as overall business and consumer confidence slumped in the wake of last month's deadly attacks. The Monetary Board decided to reduce standing deposit facility rate by 50 basis points to 7.50% and the standing lending facility rate by 50 basis points to 8.5%. Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy said that Sri Lanka is unlikely to hit its full-year economic growth target of 4%, but that the expecting the economy to grow by 3% or less this year due to the impact of the Easter Sunday attacks. The central bank chief meanwhile highlighted that Sri Lanka may borrow up to $4.5 billion internationally this year, which includes $2 billion to manage debt in 2020. The cabinet has also given the green light to borrow up to $2.5 billion from sovereign bonds in order to meet cash flows under this year's budget. Sri Lanka is also planning to borrow about $2 billion separately under a debt management law. The Treasury is expected to certify the 2018 debt number shortly, which will allow Sri Lanka to borrow up to 10% of the debt for early repayment or other debt management. The World Bank has also indicated that it will provide a guarantee which will help Sri Lanka cut interest costs. The Colombo equities ended weaker today, snapping 3 straight sessions of gains as foreign investors sold risky assets and market shrugged off a widely expected rate cut by the central bank. The benchmark stock index ended 0.26% weaker at 5,310.95, while turnover was at 167 million rupees. Foreign investors in the meantime sold a net 11.4 million rupees worth of shares. Here's a look at how markets performed this week.
During the week, the ASPI gained 0.3%. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 increased by 0.2%. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 566 million rupees. A net foreign inflow of nearly 313 million rupees was recorded for the week. This resulted the year-to-date net foreign outflow to decrease to 5.5 billion rupees. Out of the weekly turnover, crossings accounted for nearly 69%, which was a significantly higher proportion than last week.
And the rupee closed steady at 176.40 to 55 per dollar, compared with yesterday's close of 176.40 to 50. But analysts expect the rupee to weaken further. Local currency has fallen 0.06% for the week so far, but is up 3.5% for the year. Here's a look at today's foreign exchange rates. Welcome back. In international news, US President Donald Trump yesterday rejected talk among Democrats about the possibility of launching an impeachment inquiry against him in the aftermath of the Russia probe, saying he did nothing to merit such an outcome. The US President described the word impeachment as a dirty, filthy word, while calling Special Counsel Mueller a conflicted character.
You think they're going to impeach you? I don't see how they can, because they're possibly allowed, although I can't imagine the courts allowing it. I never thought that would even be possible to be using that word. To me, it's a dirty word, the word impeach. There was no high crime and there was no misdemeanor. So how do you impeach based on that? You see what we're saying? There's no obstruction, there's no collusion, there's no nothing. He was conflicted. Look, Robert Mueller should have never been chosen, because he wanted the FBI job and he didn't get it, and the next day he was picked as special counsel. If you look, this was all about Russia, Russia, Russia. They don't talk about Russia anymore because it turned out to be a hoax. Of course I fight back, because it was a false accusation.
And that's all from us here tonight. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.